look like a lot of words and a lot of paper, but it's not really. It's just in very big print. Because actually, you know, I'm older than Ruth, so it is indeed my honor to pay tribute to Ruth Zweifler, my friend, my colleague, my mentor, and one kick-ass advocate for children. It began 40 years ago when I discovered that children in the Ypsilanti Public Schools were being paddled behind closed doors in the classroom bathroom with no witnesses. Astounded and assuming that that was not legal, I inquired, oh my, was I wrong? I went on a mission to do something about it, and a friend put me in touch with Representative Lynn Jondal, who had convened a task force to draft legislation and work to change the law abolishing corporal punishment in Michigan schools. It was there, 40 years ago, that I met Ruth on that task force. And while I had been doing advocacy for vulnerable children in Ypsilanti, she was doing the same in Ann Arbor. She invited me to join her on the SAC merry-go-round, and what a ride that is 35 years ago. There are many things we know about Ruth. She's tenacious, a bit stubborn, openly opinionated, and fiercely determined. So it likely comes as no surprise when I tell you that defying advice and ignoring persuasion, RZ would take off in her bullet bug, drive all hours of the day and night to God knows where, to advocate for a student facing seemingly insurmountable obstacles while trying to achieve the public education to which they deserved. Whether it was in Fenville, where she was actually followed and closely monitored into and out of town, or Battle Creek, or Detroit, or Ann Arbor, or Belleville, or Howell, or other places near and far, she would arrive with tenacity to shine a light on the inherent needs of her client, a child, a frightened child. So often, Ruth found a way, using multiple strategies, cajoling, common sense, or threat, whatever it took to enlighten those gathered and achieve a victory for the child. I ask you, have you ever ridden in a car with Ruth at the wheel?
Margaret, no.
It was at these times that she would expound on some injustice that needed immediate action rather than on the speed limit or the other drivers around her. Ask her about the traffic stop she and her Detroit sidekick, Helen Moore, encountered and how they talked themselves out of a ticket. And then, let's not forget the building fire that destroyed the SAC offices. And Ruth was in California. Staff worked day and night with the reclamation people to save as much material, records, and furniture as possible. Ruth returned and began removing leftover water, smoke-drenched papers. Determined, unsalvageable, she was going to save them. She hauled them in her famous bug to the garage at home, and I would venture to say that many of those things still reside in the garage, 1706 South Hill. But it is Ruth's passion for shining a light on the educational needs of children, underserved or unserved by the public schools, that has always been her calling. I can see a paradigm shift that has occurred in public schools over the past 40 years for many reasons, but I believe that many of those changes have come about because of the work of Student Advocacy Center and Ruth's commitment to public education for every student. There was a time when people agreeing to serve on the Student Advocacy Center board were asked if they wanted their names published on letterhead or not. Those working within the public school system or parents fearful of retribution chose that their involvement with SAC be kept private. Not so anymore. Professional public school educators and parents alike consider it an honor to be involved with SAC. Some of you remember that fear and dread created a pall in school buildings when word got out that Ruth or an SAC advocate was coming to a student meeting. Or when Student Advocacy Center brought a civil rights suit against the Ann Arbor Public Schools for its selective enrollment practices at Roberto Clemente, and where parents of students with special needs had to decertify their children in order to have them enrolled there. Ruth won that suit. The policy changed and a corrective action plan was under supervision by the state for years. Similarly, when the Washtenaw Technical Middle College was created at Washtenaw Community College, Ruth once again protested the selective enrollment placement that was planned for WTMC. She won again. We have all heard the term school to prison pipeline. Nearly 20 years ago, Ruth was the lead author of the article, "The Children Left Behind: How Zero Tolerance Impacts Our Most Vulnerable Youth." The article was published in the University of Michigan Journal of Race and Law, which established a direct connection between school suspensions and expulsions and future incarceration, thus the term school to prison pipeline. It shocked some, brought denial from many, but it raised awareness to a reality we all knew. Years before and after the passage of IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, and the subsequent Michigan Special Education rules, Ruth regularly testified before the Michigan Board of Education, legislative committees, and of course, local school boards, advocating for fair and complete educational services for kids most in need of support. And look where we are now. Corporal punishment has not been legal in Michigan for decades. School staff reaches out to Student Advocacy Center for assistance in programming for children with difficult challenges. Many books have been written about the continuing stain of the school to prison pipeline, and IDEA has become the national standard. School personnel, present and past, openly serve on the SAC board. Case in point, Rossi Ray Taylor that you just heard from, former Ann Arbor school superintendent and incoming vice chair of the board, and Jim Hawkins, the former Ypsilanti school superintendent who served on the board for many years. There were many others that were involved with schools that served openly and with pleasure. So yes, Ruth, there has been a sea of positive change for public education, but because of your vision, determination, and willingness to accept the cost of shining your light where it was most needed for underrepresented and educationally unserved children. I believe that two of Ruth's most famous quotes finally meet. Publish while true, and let's talk about that in the past tense. We can now publish the resulting changes of your work while we talk about the journey that made it all possible in the past tense. At the same time, let's not kid ourselves into thinking that all of the work is done. Far from it. We are so fortunate that Student Advocacy Center is on firm foundation, and under the capable leadership of Perry Stone Palmquist, SAC is thriving and continues to make waves, challenging harmful practices, and supporting many vulnerable children from offices in Jackson, Detroit, and Ypsilanti. So, remember one more Ruth Zweifler quote. While I know we can't save all the children, and because I don't know how to figure out which ones, we must try to save them all.